Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. Joining me today to share the 10 best spiritual books that inspired her definitely less than ordinary life journey is one of Britain's most loved mediums, famed for her ability to bring comfort, healing, tears and laughter to her audiences. Becs Sawyer, fondly known as Becs, has been featured widely across the British media, including the national Good Morning television programme. Her spiritual medium, star being, teacher and sacred medicine practitioner, it wasn't until Becs went through her own physical and emotional transitions as a transgender medium that she really began to develop her clairvoyant abilities and her mediumship skills. And she's been doing that for over 20 years. In fact, she has a very busy schedule with her popular mediumship nights that are really enjoyed by many people across the UK and abroad, her workshops and her unique recreation readings, which have a 12-month waiting list. Becs Sawyer, welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I've got red. That's such a lovely introduction. Thank you so much.
Thanks. So you don't regard yourself as an avid reader, but you do like reading books. So that tells me you've got to be very, very picky about the books that you do read. Is that correct?
That's actually quite true. Yeah, I mean, I won't pick up. I've got to be honest, I've got about 6 books on my bedside, and some I refer to every so often. And there's one I usually try and think, oh, that's the one I'm working through right now. But I'm not the sort of person that gets through a book a month or a book a week. I'm not. I have to be honest, I'm not.
Have you always been that way?
I suppose when I was at school, you read a lot, and I don't know what I went through. I didn't do university, so that might be part of it. But I find if I find a book I enjoy, I will reference it quite a lot, or I'll go back and reread it. So I tend to. What I loved about doing this project was finding books I thought, oh my God, that was so important to me because.
Yes, yeah, meaningful books.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And things I go, I can remember when I found that book. I can remember in my case, I knew one of the authors of the book. I go, I know why that's so important to me, and it becomes part of. I think some books become part. It might sound a bit weird. They become part of you.
Yes. Yeah.
They become part of your whole of your whole life experience because they can come along at a pivotal moment in your life.
Mm. Well, your list is certainly different. You know, a lot of you've introduced me to books I'd never heard of. In fact, you introduced me to one book that sent me on such a goose chase. I was having real difficulty finding that the book was even available now. We'll get to that one in a minute. But let's start with your first book, which is The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Yeah. And this was published in 1993. Do you remember how you came across that book?
I have a little saying called freaky deaky. This is a really freaky deaky story. This is long before I transitioned, or about 8-9 years before I transitioned, or started a transition. I'd broken up with a partner, and I was in a really bad place. And I'd literally just broken up, and I'd actually moved back in with my mum, and I was in my early 30s, and 91, so I must have been just 31 or 32. I hadn't even heard of it. And I'm in a bookstore like 10 to 5, 10 minutes before the bookstore shuts. I thought I want something to read, and this will sound so strange. I'm walking along a book, and this book drops out in front of me. And it was the Celestine Prophecy. And I picked it up, I've got to have it. And I took it out, and I said I'm not an avid reader. I went to bed because I was teaching martial arts at that time. I went to bed about 10 o'clock, and I was reading it till 3:30 in the morning. and I found it transformative in what it was sharing. And for me now, as a medium or as a tutor, as a teacher, this, when people say to me, "Oh, what book should I start by reading?" I always say that book. Although obviously it's a fiction story, and it's set in the time when Peru wasn't the place to go, and this journalist goes on this search of these insights. Such a powerful story. And obviously after the Celestine Prophecy, there's a whole number of books that follow in the series. But the actual first one actually introduces people to energy, how energy can work between people, within relationships, how people can have that energy drained from them. He calls them control dramas, and how relationships, they can start with such a bang, and why do they then burn out? Fascinating book. And the story, I just love the whole story. And even now I can pick it up and read it like it's the first time. Yeah.
It is one of those books that kind of broke through, and everyone seemed to be reading it everywhere you went. Every 20 years or so, there's a book that really hits the mainstream, and this was one of them. And I felt like you when I read it too. Yeah.
It's that whole word synchronicity that went right through. And I can remember, and my memory's really, you've met me, you know what my memory's like. I can remember being on a tube and someone was reading the book. I went, "I've got to say hello to her." And I said, "I'm really sorry to bother you, but you're in the book I've got here in my bag. I've got to," and it was really strange. And it was the whole thing about synchronicity. And when I teach, I say, if you like the intuition, it's opening up to your intuition side. And I've always described your intuition as the gateway to your soul. When you listen to your intuition, it's your soul's gateway to communicating with you. If you're not into meditation or you're not into this sort of stuff, just by listening to that intuition, there's your go. And the same thing, those synchronicities then open up more and more and more. Yeah. Love that book.
The second book is the one that sent me on the Goose Chase. They Send Their Love, Memoir and Messages of a Modern Medium by Eamon Downey. And this was only published in 2015. But the weird thing was, everywhere I went, I could not find a picture of the cover, and the book seemed to be out of print.
That's Eamon. I mean, he has no interest in publicity, has no interest in pushing his books or pushing himself. He's an amazing man. He will hate it if ever he hears that I've called him my mentor, but I've known him a long time, and that man is responsible for what I do now. I've had some amazing tutors along my journey. I still have amazing tutors, but he's the one that's guiding me. His knowledge of what I call metaphysical work, and his energy work, and his mediumship, and the way he's guided me. And this book talks a bit about his life, but it also talks a lot about how he got into mediumship. And it's also within the book are some guidelines about opening up to spirit. And I've been on so many of his workshops. But this is, again, my go-to book. If ever I'm feeling a bit, can I read it? Because all mediums, any medium that says they don't get down sometimes, or they don't question their work sometimes, basically they're lying. Because if we are, it can be, we doubt it because we're working with something that's not tangible. And so when working, we go, have I served spirit okay? And I find when I'm around him or reading his book and his guideline, I talk a lot about what I call my meet and greet. It's Eamon that taught me that. And my meet and greet is if I'm doing a show or a dem, like today, when I finish chatting to you, I'm sitting on my bed. I've got my little blanket put around me, and I link with spirit. And as weird as it sounds, I will meet my first reunion this afternoon for tonight. Often they'll show me where they're sitting, what they're wearing. Don't ask me how it works because you'll go crazy. I'll talk about it later if you like, but it literally, they'll actually show me what they went. And I had someone, in fact, on Wednesday, I went to this woman, I said, "Yeah, it's your husband, this, that." And she said, "I only decided to come 20 minutes ago." I went, "Yeah, but he knew." How do you know? I don't know, because we go down the rabbit hole back to that time and space. But yeah, so Eamon is my, he's taken a back step a lot. And so he's still teaching a little bit. So I've done a couple of workshops with him this year. And if the book's out of print, my copy's worth a fortune, because he is one of those unique. I think what it is with him, he's unique in as much that he listened to spirit and treads his own path. And his teaching isn't about go get a bit of link. He's the one that taught me, and I say this quote because it's his quote I've basically stolen. He always taught me and taught everyone, mediumship is easy. It's a natural phenomena. We're all mediums. Our brain gets in the way, makes it difficult. So his focus always been on how is the medium, how is your process, how is your preparation, and that always resonated with me. And that's what I teach now. When I teach mediumship, I always say, it's a journey of personal exploration.
Mm.
You know, everyone can be a medium. I'm not one of those natural born mediums who go, click, I've got spirit. I have to go through my own preparation process. And he taught me that.
He teaches at the Arthur Findlay College, which is, famous the world over. And I know I've had several guests on this show who've actually, Americans and Australians who have trained there, come specially to be trained there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been going there 15 years. And once I was going there 3 times a year. I now try and make it once, twice a year, because for me it's got a little bit expensive. But you get a lot of Americans, Australians over there. And he was a tutor there. He pulled away for a while, but he's back next year. I've already booked the course for next year, because I just like being in his energy.
Yeah.
And there's a lady called Jackie Wright, who's now president of the SNU, and I've studied under her. And the two of them together, well, I can just sit in their energy and just learn and just take on board. I think that's the thing is, you never stop learning.
No.
And I'm always just scratching. My work is just scratching the surface. You can always get that better reunion. You can always just serve spirit. That's a bit of a cliche, but you can always serve spirit that little bit better.
I do like the way you describe it as a reunion, because that's exactly what it is for people.
Yeah. That is actually in fact, Eamon used that a lot, but I've taken it as kind of, these are reunions. I mean, again, his teachings, when I teach, for me, whenever there's a reunion from spirit to a loved one, there's always 3 parts. It's a life lived. Who was it? It might be your dad, whose name was Fred, lovely. And then it's the life shared, what you shared, maybe the passing, how important it was that you were together. But the most important part of any reunion is the life reunited. It's showing the person in front of you that they're not dead.
Yeah.
They're here. They're not in the past. They're here with you now. They're here with you. I can't change that physical missing, but they go, oh my God, that's my dad. It might just be a very silly validation. It happened to me on Wednesday, and it was a silly validation about a broken plug socket, and it was a white plug socket. And the woman, I've got no white plug sockets. So we'll check it. There was one in the wardrobe at home that her husband broke the week before, and it's white. The rest are all chrome. So that for me is a lovely validation that they're in the here and now.
Yeah, and that is the kind of detail that people are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like any mediumship, but between me and you, I like a bit of gossip. It's all lovely getting your nan, but was your nan a naughty girl with the next door neighbour? It's just like it's getting, because what it then does, it brings them alive.
Yeah.
Of course you've got to be evidential and you've got to have a validation for them, but once they know it's their mum, well, it's like someone you love rings you up. They don't spend 10 minutes proving it's them.
Yeah.
And again, I've been saying that's why it's a natural process. Mediumship's a natural process, in my view.
So book number 3, this is a kind of, your journey into the, psychedelic medicines. This was DMT and the Soul of Prophecy, a new science of spiritual revelation in the Hebrew Bible by Rick Strassman. That one was published in 2014.
Yeah, this is an incredible read. And I find it a bit difficult because I'm not the most scientific of people, but I kept working through it. What I found fascinating was DMT it can be called, they call it the sacred molecule or the soul molecule. But DMT is produced by the body anyway. It's produced in the pineal gland, and also they think now in the stomach, but they're not really quite sure. But it gives a psychedelic effect, and a lot of the references in the Old Testament really sound like there was a use of psychedelics or as I call them, natural medicines.
Yes.
Sacred medicines. And that I view anything from a mushroom to ayahuasca to buffo, toe smoke, or whatever. It's a sacred medicine. If you have dandelion tea, it's a sacred medicine. You can make, or the blue lotus flower. You have a dry blue lotus flower tea. It's they use that in ancient Egypt. And what I liked with his book was it was so referenced, so researched, and you think, oh my God, when they talk about who could do prophecy, the prophecies, and how they all tie in with sacred medicines, I loved it. And again, it's part of my journey has been with sacred medicines over the last 5-6 years now. And one of the other books ties in with it, and I've had a hell of a journey with I've drunk the madre, the mother medicine, the ayahuasca, quite a lot, and done a few other things. We tried later, the buffo, toad smoke, and it alters how you view life. It gives you a different life experience.
Did you read this book before or during that journey?
During. I read the first one as well, but this one is the one that I go, oh my, because I have an interest in the Bible. I have an interest because we'll talk about the next book. I have an interest in that. I have a great question in mind. I don't accept everything, but you start looking at things. When you look at things from like, oh my God, these guys were connected with sacred psychic medicines, and they view life differently. And there's different life forces, different energies. And if they're connecting with that, you start going, oh, you start reading. I think it's one section where the rabbis go into the sacred space, and I think it's the acacia bush they burn. They come out and they're off their head, but they're not. But they're connected with spirit.
Yes.
Yeah. But if you think, and I don't want to go down any rabbit holes unless you want to, but we are encouraged, we are programmed not to connect with that source.
Mm.
We want to do it. And again, and no disrespect to anyone, if you look at how the church works, you can only go through one way to get to. Well, actually, we all have a divine connection. And again, we'll talk about the Bible in a minute. But Jesus always said, or the Christ conscious always said, "I am the way to the light." Yeah, not him, but love is the way to the light. And the only thing we have in this life is love. The only thing we take with us is the memory of love. Got that? Got it? Yeah. That's all we take with us. You come into this world with nothing. We experience love in all its different facets, good, bad, different, and we take the memories of this experience. When I work, I always say to people, if your mum or dad had this dementia or Alzheimer's, that doesn't go with them. The memory of it goes with them. It's like me and my trans journey. I don't cross over being trans. I cross over going, oh, that's my memory of that life experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, the DMT or the sacred medicines gets you in touch with a part of you that goes, actually, a lot of this life is BS, and what's important. And that book was, for anyone that's interested in DMT or maybe not so much the sacred, but the history of it, it's a really good read.
Yeah, and there's quite a few books emerging now. One in particular, I can never remember the guy's name, but he talks about how all of the Greek philosophers, they had their schools and how they were taking medicine back then, and that's how they enhanced their own consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at ayahuasca as a classic example, you've got some amazing medicine that's taken from a vine and a bark. That's like, so it's basically two medicines wrapped together, because one suppresses, because the body can't absorb DMT. It's got an enzyme MOA. I can't pronounce it, but it's called MOA. So the one of the plants suppresses the MOA, the other one is DMT and lets it get absorbed. And you think, where does that intelligence come from? Out of the 100,000 of plants in the Amazon, some put those two together. You think, well, there's got to be a consciousness behind that. It just has to be. And even with plants in the garden, I mean, I've got into a little bit of gardening, and to watch a seed go from that to like a huge, how does it know? How does it know? It just does it. Yeah.
So book number 4, you mentioned the Bible.
Yep.
You love the Bible.
I love, right, when I say I love the Bible, I like reading the Bible, it doesn't mean I'm religious, because I'm not. I love the spiritual movement, but for me, religion is spirituality is spirituality. But something like the Bible is a way of controlling your spirituality. That's only my view in a lot of ways, because it doesn't encourage you to be an individual. So my love of the Bible goes back to when I was a child, because I was in a Christian childhood, and I can remember the picture stories of Daniel in the Lion's Den, and then I became a choir boy. I couldn't sing, but I liked wearing the blue dress on a Sunday, so I quite enjoyed that, really. But I read the Bible, so I'm quite well read. I mean, I'm not read in the Bible, but I can take parts. I like the message of it. I don't like the way the messages are sometimes cherry picked. And I get the New Testament was like written years afterwards. It's gone through loads and loads of translations. So for me, it can only be it's a guidebook. But I enjoy tipping my toe into going, I like that bit. And I go, but I don't just start going, me personally, I don't take every word as gospel, because of the way it's been translated all the way through, and all the certain books that may not be put in there for whatever reason. And then you can look at the Old Testament as a completely different, for me, and I look at the Old Testament and I go, well, if you could read Hebrew, the Hebrew version, then you'll get get the pure text. But I'm reading something that's probably been translated again and again and again. So even with the Old Testament, you're not getting the true words unless you can read Hebrew, and you go right the way back and you study the old. I'm told there's an older verse, but I don't, so I can only view it. It's a bit like having an atlas and someone's redrawn it a few times for you. You go, oh, that's roughly the way. There's my guide. And if you look at the Christ consciousness, whether you believe Jesus was an actual person or there's a conscience behind it, he speaks one words. So he speaks just a few words: love and forgiveness. Unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. If you can follow that, you're halfway home. Everything else makes it complicated.
You say that Matthew 17 is a great go-to when talking to anyone about mediumship. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, Matthew 17, especially if you get people go, you mustn't do this, and it's disgusting, it's evil, and they quote the Old Testament. Yep. If you go to the Old Testament, lots of things are evil. Speak bad to your mum and dad, stoned to death. I mean, there's a lot of examples in the Old Testament where most of us shouldn't be around, But when anyone says about, oh yes, it's evil, it's this and that, I say, well, okay, read Matthew 17. And Matthew 17 is the transfiguration of Jesus. It's where Jesus and two disciples, John and, oh God, I can't remember the other one. They go up the mountain, and it's a shaft of light. Jesus gets overshadowed by God. He speaks the word of God. So for me, that is beautiful transmission. He's speaking the word of the divine. Then he calls up this. Then he calls in the spirits. I think it's Moses and Elijah. So he's a medium. He's the best medium ever. And then he talks about healing. He was a healer. So Jesus was a medium and a healer. And he said, "Go and do my work." And he was also a seer, because he said, "You must not talk about this till I've gone." So he was foretelling his own passing. So, I see Jesus as such a spiritual being on this earth at that time. But obviously, again, you start saying to people, you can link with God yourself, and you can do what he can do. Suddenly it becomes, well, why do you need a church? Why do you need power? I'm not saying that is the reason, but it's not swaying right. And often if I talk to someone about that whole part of the Bible, they go, "No, it doesn't mean that." Well, I think you find it does. So yeah, so I like, I've read like the End of Days, and you can read all sorts of symbolism into it, and there's a lot of symbolism. And the other thing, obviously, with the Bible, like a lot of religions, there is so many stories that go right through it. If you look at the flood, and you look at, and we're going to talk about him in a minute, but there's the work done on something called the Younger Dryas, and when the flood myth actually might have come from, almost every single culture has a flood story behind it. And it all traces back to roughly the same time. So I'm not saying the ark didn't have two of every animal in there, but it probably didn't. But it might have done. But I'm not saying. But what he does, you've got those stories that run right the way through so many cultures. And the same thing, the Jesus story, the birth of a virgin to a virgin, it all goes through them. So there's for me, and it ties in, and we might talk about it in a minute, is that how there's an unspoken story, or a culture with amnesia. There's so much there, and that's why I think I love voice. So it's not something I use as a way to live my life. It's a way of, like, I look at going, I love the message of it.
Yeah. Book 5, Fingerprints of the Gods. Yeah. Graham Hancock, The Evidence of Earth's Lost Civilization, published in 1995. You've got a lot of respect for him, and so do I. He has been, obviously I've never met the guy. He has had such a huge influence over my life. From the first time I picked his book up, to his latest work, where he's now back in South America. He's been to Brazil South America doing some more work. He has been instrumental in making people question things, and he's inspired so many other people. There's an Australian guy who has just got one of the vase. He calls it a vase from a private place, but from what was meant to be Egyptian. The quality of this workmanship is impossible to do without computerized technology. And Graham sort of opened my eyes to all the questions, and it just resonated. We talk about the Great Pyramids. Well, there's these pyramids all over the flipping earth, everywhere. People don't realize. And it was him that got me into ayahuasca, because what happened with him, he was mentioning ayahuasca, and then he bought out a fiction book based around that. And then it was a friend of mine that told me about a retreat you could go to, and that was the start of my sacred medicine journey. Was really
through his writings and hearing him on interviews. But he's done so much work, and it's such a shame he's been so pillared by mainstream media. And his early work, he went and researched work on the my brain's gone dead, on the Ark of the Covenant. And he went to go and investigate that. And he doesn't make himself out to be an archaeologist. He just says, I'm a journalist. I'm just exploring. Here's what I found. And his latest work, one of his latest books, when he spoke about the younger giants, he works with a guy called Randall Carson, who's an amazing guy. He's a physicist, a geologist type. And the things they've uncovered about the flood that happened, and the young giants is now a fact. And it goes, and then I haven't read him write too much about it, but you start reading about all the caves that are under the earth that were man-made, and you start thinking, okay, really? And then you start looking at some of the archaeological evidence that's left behind. You think they really made that with copper chisels and hammers? So I have such open mind in my life. I just think, okay, Atlantis, they're now talking that maybe being on the west coast of Africa, and you start looking where the Great Lakes were in Africa. It just makes you question everything, and he really is the man that started it all for me.
Have you been watching Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix? His series about Göbekli Tepe.
Oh, was that? Yeah, was that his series?
That's the series on Netflix. Yeah.
I watched it all. It's like, and there again, he wasn't trying to tell. He did it so brilliantly, just questioning, and the backlash. You start thinking, what program were you watching? What I was watching. He's just suggesting this, and this. But it's again, you come. Is there an agenda? You just think someone's got a narrative going on that you can't just go. Okay, let's talk about it. And I remember again, and it's on YouTube. I think when Hawass was in charge of Egyptian antiquities in Egypt, they set up a debate, and Gordon Hank, because their argument in Egypt was it can't be that old because there's nothing in the world that's that old too. And then on came Göbekli Tepe, and Graham went, well, what about this? And Hawass went, never heard of it. You just know he had. So it's just like, and I think a lot of people got so much invested in the current narrative, the current story, that they can't go, we were wrong, or let's change our minds,
Yeah. The same is happening, with the Bosnian pyramids and Dr. Sam Osmanagic, and some of the carbon dating there is back to something like 46,000 years. I mean, and further still. Yeah. And the mainstream don't want to accept it. But
it was like in America, they're like in America, they're saying there's no one here for since 10,000 years ago, and someone actually dug deeper and went, look, and they ruined his career. And now it's come out. There was I can't remember what they're called. But they're actually the American things get older and older and older. And there was a guy who actually came on the Joe Rogan. He's got a land up in Alaska somewhere, and he's found like this. They keep unraveling all these mammoth tusks, all these mammoths that died overnight. All the big fauna died almost overnight in America. And well, people didn't. But then they try and say, they got eaten. No, they didn't. A whole, you don't wipe out a whole species by just eating them. It's like, no. So I had this deep question in mind about our past as well as our future.
Yeah. And I think you're not the only one. Certainly people who watch this particular show. Well, we're going to take a short break now. You're listening to a No BS Spiritual Book Club interview, and sharing the 10 books that had the biggest influence on her life journey is one of Britain's most loved mediums, teachers and sacred medicine practitioners, Becs Sawyer, whose impressive clairvoyant skills and gifts really came to the fore after she went through her own physical and emotional transition as a transgender woman. We'll be back with more of Beck's 10 best lists after this break.
Om Times TV.
Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and when I'm not hosting Om Times Media's flagship radio show What Is Going On and the No BS Spiritual Book Club, I help people share their untold stories. Books are my life, my joy and my passion, And there is no greater reward than helping aspiring writers get their books out of their heads and into the hands of those who are waiting to read them. If you feel that you have a book in you but don't know where to begin, visit Sedgbeer.com. Click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That's Sedgbeer.com, SEDGBEER.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I wanted to talk to you about a program called the Dream Arc and a retreat that we're doing, and I want to invite you along. And the Dream Arc is a dream technology. And even the latest physics is suggesting now that reality is not what we think it is, that it's kind of a construct. And that the Dream Arc teaches us how to use the full operating system to navigate our brain frequencies between waking and sleeping and dreaming, and to move through the inner realms and the outer realms seamlessly. And you will work in the Dream Arc with certain animals that will come to you, maybe in real life, maybe through your intuition, in magical ways, or perhaps through, just dreams that come to you. It's filled, the Dream Arc, with invitations and suggestions and tasks that you choose intuitively. You choose the ones for you. You don't know what you're choosing, but they come to you. So please join us as we dive down the wormhole into the Dream Arc, and let's see what happens.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Becs Sawyer, book number 6, On the Side of Angels, Gordon Higginson's Life Story by Jean Bassett, published in 1993.
Yeah, never met the man. Probably the best known medium within the SNU, within modern spiritualism. He was the head of the SNU for 20 years. Tirelessly worked for them, but he started being trained for this by his mum when he was, I think, about 4 years old. But his mediumship was so evidential, so amazing. It's still spoken about today. But what I like about this book, and it was interesting because when I was doing my list, I picked up and just thought, I'll read a chapter. And it was a chapter about where he was, again, pillared and ripped apart by the press, and how he nearly gave up on it and nearly walked away from it. And a lot of people don't know that about Gordon. He in his own way, he was very vulnerable. And the book talks about from a young age, his time in the army. I think he was stationed in Malta in the Second World War. So he went through lots. And then he dedicated his life to service, to spirit. And that's inspired me. And whenever I work, I always say to people, when I get in what's called the power and I start, that's when I come alive. That's why I'm in this body this lifetime, because it's taken me long enough to get to do this. And I'm loving this. I'm going to go to the gym for an hour after I finish chatting to you. But I know when I drive to the dem or the show tonight, or the event, that's when I come alive. And I feel that's how he was. He had a troubled personal life at times, I feel, but he was such an inspirer. And it becomes quite, the lineage becomes really interesting, because he had 4 or 5 what I would call proteges. One was someone called Mavis Petilia, who I was fortunate enough to know really well and studied under her as well. There was Eamon, who I've mentioned, Eamon Downey, who was also very close to Gordon. And there was a couple of others called Paul Jacobs and the guy, the other one's got out of my head, but they were all close to him. So I've been very blessed to be part of that line, if you like. And I felt him close a couple because I go to the college and you'll feel his energy. And I felt him close a couple of times, just almost like checking me out and going, I hope I'm doing okay. But he's been a major influence, not just on my development, but my mentor's development. And so it's a great read. If you've got any issues in like the history of spiritualism, it's a great place to start. I mean, I know there's a library at the college and I've studied a little bit, but I can't call myself knowledgeable on the history of modern spiritualism like some are. But for me, Gordon, along with a few others, are pivotal people in the expansion of spiritualism in this country, in the UK and the world. Yeah.
Well, book number 7 is a little bit of a switch here. The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. What a treat.
Yeah. And this for me is so special on so many levels. As a child reading it, it was my escape go-to. You know, as a little boy, the whole trans politics is, I'm going like, really at the moment. I'll talk about me if you want later on, but it's just like, but I would fantasize about going through that wardrobe, strange land, coming out as a girl, and it was such pure escapism. Obviously, the depth of it, the philosophy behind it, who Aslan really was meant to be. It was lost in like an 8-9-year-old child, but I loved it. And then later on in life, I got a big hard copy, and I'd read that to my son when my son was young, and he loved the book as well. And of course, when the films came out, it brought it into another escapism for me. And of course, I think with anything with C.S. Lewis, I think there's such an escapism, but there's also such a message behind it. You know, you've got sibling rivalry that becomes sibling love. You've got, you've got the temptation of the Snow Queen, and then you've got the right wrong, the forgiveness. It's so I'll get a goosebump me. There's such a thread behind each of the stories. But for me, it comes back to what the initial hook was. It was my escape book. I would have, I don't remember it, but I probably as a little boy would have hidden a wardrobe thinking like, where's my Narnia? You know, it's like, it was such an important book for me growing up. I had to have it in my choice.
Yeah, of course you did. Yeah. Number 8, another one that's quite unusual, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig, 1974.
This is one of the first books I probably ever picked up, because I might well have picked it up thinking it was a motorbike book, because as a youngster I was into motorcycles, and then I got into it in a big way, and I became a teacher and a motorcycling and all the advanced, and we had a core of friends, but we were all quite philosophical. And I think we all went through a phase of reading that book. My memory was quite poor. I didn't want to pick it up again, but I remember it being a story of going touring through America and keeping the motorbike together. And it's like tinkering the motorbike was almost like tinkering yourself, adapting what's going on and learning. And I didn't pick the book up again. I did a little Wikipedia about, reading about the author. And I didn't realize how long it took him to write the book, and what was inspiring about this when I realized how many refusals we had from publishers before we actually got it published. And for me, if you say, Becs, what's the most important part of that book? I can't remember. I didn't want to reread it, but I just know it sits within my soul about being 14, 15, finding it, reading it, probably not understanding the depth of where it was going, but it opens a door. And that's what I think happens with the synchronicities of life. A book comes along, or you bump into someone, and it can just be a sentence. I've had it in my work. I've had it through work. You give someone a message from a loved one, and that can transform their life. And it is literally a moment in time. And that comes back to talk about the sort of my work is that I'm serving spirit, so I've got to get out of the way so spirit can do their job. And it is because spirit know the work they want to do for their loved one. And it is a bit like that book. It might be a moment in time that sits in them forever, but changes how they view life. And that's what that book did for me. I can't remember the context of it or the contents of it so much, but I remember the effect it had on me when I had it, and I'd read it and go, I try to make it understood it, but I was 14 or 15, but it always just, then it led to our friends would sit. I can remember like 18, 19, sitting with friends on the motorbike, maybe little 21, sitting in the motorbike group after we have a motorbike ride, talking about, well, is life all a dream? Are we really all spike? And we're young 20-year-olds, like back in the early 80s, when all this stuff wasn't spoken about. Yeah. And even now I'm still in contact with some of them, and we still have these conversations about, what's life? Where's it all about? What's the next step after we pass on, Yeah, that was a very good book. Yeah.
Book 9, Prana and Pranayama by Swami Niranjan Ananda Saraswati, 2002. I hope I didn't mangle that.
Oh, don't ask me. I wouldn't even try and pronounce that one, Sandie. That book, I don't know how I found that book, but that book is my go-to book on my bedside. My love and yoga started back with my dad. And my dad, my brother's got the copy over in America. And it was a blue heart. I can remember it's been a blue hardback book. My dad must have bought it in the 60s when yoga wasn't even spoken about. And it talked about prana, which is, for those that don't know, for me, prana is, I call it, when I try and explain to people, it's life force. Everything's got life force in it. And we can use that and engage with it and feel it. And so I was thinking about prana when I was again, teenager. So, this is what I love about in the books. It suddenly realized everything was popping in for a reason. My whole life has been synergistic as well. And going, oh, that happened then for a reason. Then that popped in. Until you get where you are now. And this particular book talks about, and I started yoga probably about 5 years ago. I'm not bendy, but I've got an amazing yoga teacher. I go to 4 or 5 classes a week if I can. And my favorite is the pranayama breathing, exercises. And coming back to this book, it explains chakras beautifully. It explains basic breathing beautifully. And and I must have had the book years. I'm still not more than halfway through it because I get to a point and go, oh, I'll stop reading. I think I meant to, because some of the breathing exercises get so deep, so intense. And again, it's a book I would recommend to anyone who's looking at prana and breathing exercises. I love it. But again, I'm not all the way through it. I've had it years because it just seems to, I start reading again and go, I've got lost in that bit, which means I've got to go back to it again. And even I will go back to the start. I must have started that book literally a dozen times and go, oh, and after in the second chapter, I went, I don't remember that bit because I wasn't meant to.
Yeah.
And
you haven't reached that point. Yeah.
And I think it's such a deep book. I think sometimes in our Western world, our Western life, I think if we got too engrossed in that, maybe I'd lose sight of the other things I'm meant to be doing as well. That's not me trying to make an excuse, but that's me making an excuse. So, but for anyone who's looking to explore anything about, if you like, the philosophical side of yoga or the philosophical side of that, it's a beautiful book. A beautiful book. Yeah.
Well, your last book is, we're back to the beginning. It's also by Eamon Downey, and it's called The Colour Bible, A Living Energy. This is a very intriguing book. I've looked for it, and I don't think this one's available right now either. So if you've got a copy, hold on to it.
I've actually got a second copy. If you let me know when I see, I'll gift it to you. I've got 2 copies. I'll gift it to you.
That would be wonderful.
I've got 2 copies because I was given one signed by him for me, and I actually bought one. So I'm sure I've got a second copy. I'll dig it out. If I can find it, I'll gift it to you. And what I love about this book, I was never, I always love colour, but you go and watch, what's the colour making you feel? And I was like, really? But this book opened my eyes to colour as a vibration. It vibrates, obviously. And from that, it gives an energy. And then how do you make feel? And I explored it. And again, he taps into the chakra system. He taps into it. And it's not a thick book. It's like that thin, but it goes through all the different colors and you get a feeling from it. For me, he's an amazing writer. As I said, I might be out of print. He didn't design it to be a massive bestseller. I don't suppose, but I loved how it pulled me in to realize color is a vibration. When you see auric colors, I don't see color, but I can look at someone and go, oh, I know that's green. It's that clear sense. I know that's green. And how's that making me feel? So I feel it now as an energy as opposed to, yeah, it's green, whatever. It's not, that green. What is that energy doing to me? So it helped my mediumship and helped my psychic development and helps my teaching. Yeah.
Yes, and someday when we're having a glass of wine and we're not on air, I'll tell you a few stories about colour that you will definitely relate to. Colour is such a fascinating thing. The way that it can be used to change your mood, change the energy, and the way we respond to colour. I mean, that blue you're wearing. I can't take my mind off it and my eyes off it because it is so vivid and it is such it has a feeling, that really lifts you up.
Yeah, I was thinking, oh, I want something nice, and then I'm not saying this isn't nice, but it's a t-shirt. I looked at it, I've got to wear that, and again, it's that intuition. Oh, well, I like that then.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's true. Colour is just an incredible thing. Well, that's your 10 best list, and obviously, I've got some questions about you and the work that you're doing. One of the things I want to know is, were you aware of your mediumship abilities when you were young?
I had a strange time growing up. As a little boy, I wanted to chat to spirit people or dead people, but got nothing. And I was only with my mum before my mum, not long before my mum passed. She went to me. I knew I had a best friend called Girl growing up when I was very small, but I didn't realise this best friend Girl was with me from about 18 months to the age of about 5 when I started school. And she went everywhere with me. So was she a spirit friend? Don't know, might have been. But I was always drawn to spirit, but I got nothing. My whole world was fantasy land of trying to escape being a boy. And as a little boy, I just wanted to be a mermaid, which was great at 7, bit rubbish at 28. So I was stuck in my imagination world a lot of the time. And I grew up there's a very well-known medium here called Doris Stokes. And growing up watching her, I just want to do that, but got nothing. I sat in development circle in my 20s, got a little bit, but then just it petered out. And then along came the very famous medium Colin Fry. And he worked with someone called Tracy Higgs, or actually no, Tracy quite well, and Tony Stockwell. I'd watch them on telly going, that's what I want to do. Oh, and Derek Akora. I'd watch them, that's all I want to do. And I get so angry, not at them, but frustrated. And it wasn't until I started going through my own emotional, physical transitions, did somehow the right tutors come along. It was an overlap. As I hadn't actually started transitioning, but I was looking at facial surgery and things like that. And it was a slow osmosis. It's almost like they've gone hand in hand. But again, it ties in what I say about mediumship is a personal journey of exploration. You've got to be open to being you. Otherwise, you can't do mediumship. Because otherwise, the job of the mediums is get their brain out of the way so spirit can do their job. I'm now in a place where if I get up on stage or on platform, whatever I'm doing, I don't worry whether I'm trans, man, woman. I'm just up there, out of the way, serving spirit. Don't get me wrong, I love my work. I love the interaction with public, but it's a journey I've had to go on to find the place where I'm at now. So it's really gone hand in hand.
There are only in every generation, there's only a small handful of people love mediums, but there's only a few that really, make the big time, if you know what I mean, and get widely known. Did you ever imagine that you would become so well known?
You see, I go, when you say, I go, what, really? I just, what I try and do is, I'm a great believer. I just keep my head down. I do what I do. I do what I love, and I'm here on the planet to do, if you like. And I'm blessed to still have some amazing tutors. I've just done what I did the other week at the college with an amazing tutor who works amazing with energy. But the energy is first, then the mediumship second. It's working the two together, and that was an amazing week. So again, I'm always scratching the surface. I am very blessed that people seem to like the way I work, which is lovely. But if someone said to me 20 years ago, Becs, you're going to transition, you're going to be in front of hundreds of people doing your work, I'd have gone, yeah, well, you know what you can do. That's never going to happen. But it has. And it's evolved into where I'm like chatting to you now about mediumship. And it's been a journey and a half, Sandie. It's been a journey and a half, I mean,
I don't doubt
it. I say to people, there's a lot of trans stuff going off at the moment. And I try not to get involved because I always try and see everyone's side of the story, and I end up getting myself shot from both sides. I had someone say to me the other week, well, you're not a natural biological woman. I went, well, no, really? I was born with something you wasn't. I won't say the word I was going to say, but I was born with one of those. Of course I'm not a biological woman. I'm Becs, and hopefully people like me. I'm on my journey. But what's happened is, what I do love, if there's one thing about being trans, there's not many things you love about being trans, but I can see both sides. It's being empathic. It makes you more of an empath. I get men's perspective. I get women's because I'm we were called twin souls. If you look at the Native Americans, they would call us twin souls. They'd recognize 5 genders. I think it's one of the sides. So I get my part, but it makes me a different type of medium. Yeah.
Mm. And you say that you're a star being.
Yeah, I'm a great. You see, this is where right. Right. What it means to me is that I think there's some of us that have come here, and I again was the biggest skeptic with this, really, but it came through the medicine. It came through the madre. And the first time it happened, I was on a retreat, and ayahuasca is, I'd say to anyone, if anyone's watching this, is that if you're going to explore special sacred medicine, make sure you're in a sacred space that holds you. Unfortunately, there are people now experiment with ayahuasca. Don't even think it. It's sacred. And even something with mushrooms, I'd say make sure you're in a sacred hold when someone's holding space for you. So I was on this particular, I was blessed when I found this retreat I went to, and I said I've drunk a lot, but every time I felt safe, I could cry, I could release, I could purge, knowing I was being held. And it is, when you're doing the medicine, you become totally vulnerable, and that's part of my path. I was never good at being totally needing anyone or trusting. And the meditation a place where I was dying, felt I was dying, and had someone. It changes how you view life. And anyway, one particular journey towards the end, we're up dancing, and Marjorie went to me, step into the blue light. I went, what? And there's a blue light coming down. I went, okay. So I stepped in the blue light, and it just gave me an experience of going, I'm connected to the stars, the planets. And again, there's a lot of people trying to make a lot of money out of it. Yes, you're Octurian, you're Palladian. This is, I just shared this, saying I think there's more to this than anyone knows. And if you're interested, you've got to explore it for yourself, and make sure, again, if you're exploring it, you explore it from a place of safety and a place of trusting whoever you're doing it with. And for me, it really made me aware of me being a blue, almost like angelic extraterrestrial being. But is that me, or is that an influence over me? I'll let you know when I get there. When my time comes and I cross over, if there's a spaceship waiting for me, I was right. If there's not a spaceship there, my brain got in the way. The brain always gets in the way. It's just, even when I do my mediumship, I say I made a mistake. I will make. Mediums aren't told they can make mistakes, but when I'm teaching, I'll say I'm going to make mistakes. I'm working. My brain will get in the way. Yeah. So it's only like, oh, that's my ego. Get out of the way. You apologize and move on. And the same with this. If I cross over and I'm just in spirit, okay. But if there's more to it, I know.
The thing is, you won't need a spaceship.
No, exactly.
You won't need one. Yeah. Do you feel?
Exactly.
I mean, to transition, I know what's involved in that. I ghosted one of Britain's most famous, long past now, transgender women. I ghosted her autobiography. So I know exactly what is involved in that. And it is not a journey for the light-hearted. It is not an easy journey by any means. And I have tremendous respect for anybody who will go to those lengths to be who they are. Do you feel that, clearly you're so happy with what you're doing now, the work that you're doing, and everything I've heard, you are so good at it and people love you for it. Do you kind of feel like that's a little reward? Not that you need one, but it's a nice little, you've gone through so much, and now you can rest in the fact that you're doing what you love and being who you are.
Yeah. I've had to work through, and this is a personal part of my journey. I'm still working through a lot of guilt, because when you change one life, it leaves other people in the wake, and it changes people that you love. It changes their perspective of you. So yeah, if someone could wave now, that's a really great question. Because if someone said, "Here's a magic wand, we can make you just a normal man, and you'll be happy with your bits. You'll be happy to look in the mirror and not want to kill yourself. You won't want 20 hours. Well, I've had 20 hours of facial surgery. You won't want that all done. You won't want to change your bits, because my first facial surgery was 12 hours just of bone work. So I've been through a bit, but well, everything would stay okay. There'll be part of me going, well, that'd be lovely, because my relationship with my children, my relationship with my family, it wouldn't cause any ructions. But then I go, actually, when I like Happy Wednesday, and someone's dad reunited with her daughter, and the reunion, Sandie, was so beautiful. I can't remember what I said, but she was like, oh my God. And when I can't remember what I said, there's something I said at the end, almost like a throwaway comment. She went, no one knows that. And I went to give her a hug. And when I give a hug, sometimes spirit. Sounds really weird, but it's like the film Ghosts. It's almost like they overshadow me and they hold them. I call it a hug from heaven. It sounds weird, but it's actually true. It's a hug from heaven. And if I'm part of that and I hold someone, you go, well, that's why I'm here.
So
That's why I'm here.
do you think that if you hadn't made the transition, you wouldn't have become a medium? You wouldn't have pushed yourself out there?
I don't think my mediumship would have. I don't think my mediumship would have manifested if I'd stayed in that male energy body, because there was still the angry side, and it wasn't like, it's almost like energetically I knew I had to go through everything to be this, because by being trans or being this open as me, I can see both sides, and so it makes me, I think, as an empath, it makes me more able to get out of the way and feel a man's anger at something. Oh yeah, he really hated that football team, because I can feel that as a kid or whatever. So I don't think, I tried to develop my mediumship as a man when I was in my late 20s, just didn't work. So I think I had to go through this to be this.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. And you have a really healthy Facebook following, and you do meditations every morning, don't you?
Yeah, 5 mornings a week during lockdown. I started from during lockdowns. I started with just a phone and me, and it got to say someone helped me get a bigger screen and a nice webcam, and I call this big mic my professional microphone. And we're doing online meditation 7 mornings a week, and I was doing 6 nights a week online. It was all free, but the meditation now is about 5 mornings a week. But I've got a meditation page, groups. We've got literally hundreds and hundreds of meditations up there because we're doing it every day.
Yeah.
So even now it's nice. We get, I don't get hundreds, but I haven't tried to go out there getting hundreds. I just believe the right people will find it, and it helps the right people at the right time. Some have been with me for 3.5 years. It started. Some pop in once and go, oh my God, thank you. Never see them again. But it's all okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I try and do a monthly meditation, mediumship night online as well. Because when I was doing that, because during lockdown, I was online 6 nights a week, and 2 of those were mediumship nights. Well, now, because I'm back out there, I can only really get on. I try and get one night a month free, when we can do a night of mediumship. And that is quite popular.
Yeah.
We get quite a lot of people on that. It's nice. We get like 500-600 people on that. It's nice.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time now, Bex. It's been a real joy talking to you, and I want to thank you for adding your 10 best list to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations.
Oh, Sandie, thank you so much. It's been a real journey for me as well, and I've loved it. I really have enjoyed. I've enjoyed chatting to you. It made me realise how. See, I'm not an avid reader, but it made me realise that books have had such a big influence over me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. So, Becs Sawyer's 10 best list can be found at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com, and you can learn more about her work and everything that she's doing at the website Becs, BECS-medium.com. And you can also find her on her Facebook page, facebook.com/Becs UK. That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you. Thank you, Bex.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you.